Stanford University.
All right, well, welcome to Stanford CS 193P winner of 2015. This is lecture number 2. Apologize up front for my terrible voice. We're going to try and get through this as best we can today. Our topics are twofold. We're going to continue the calculator demo that we started in last lecture. And then we're going to have some slides about this model view controller object-oriented design pattern that we're going to use in everything we do when we build applications in this class. All right, so let's get started with that demo. Again, here's a slide with a summary of kind of the important things we're going to talk about. You don't need to read those in advance here. It's more for reference. My slides in general, I post them. It's mostly intended to almost be note-taking for you, to be able to go back and try and figure out, whoa, what did he talk about that day? Oh, yeah, what's important, etc. So my slides do tend to be a little bit dense. I tend to put a little more on them than just bullet items. But that's because I want you to be able to look back and kind of get just a little bit more depth to remind yourself what I talked about. Okay? All right, so this demo, if you'll remember last time where we left off, we had gotten the keypad fully working, all right? And we were talking a little bit about properties and instance variables and how we had to initialize them. And someone asked a question right at the end of the lecture, perfect timing, what about the little outlet that we dragged out, that display UI label exclamation point? How come we didn't have to make that equal to something to start? And that's where this demo is going to pick up, okay?
Okay, well, let's dive back into this demonstration where we left off, which was this line of code here. And we had just talked about the fact that we have to initialize all of our variables in a class, in any class. And so that's why we need this equals false here. We wanted the equal false too, but we needed it. And yet it didn't seem like we needed one here. And why was that? Well, it turns out that this right here, even though it doesn't quite look like one, is an optional. And optionals automatically get equal nil given to you. So you don't have to actually put the equals nil here. So that's why, so this one is getting initialized. It's just being done automatically for you. But let's talk about the look of this thing. It's got this exclamation point here. And if it were an optional, you'd be used to it having a question mark. For example, when we look at this optional right here, current title, you see it's string question mark, not exclamation point, question mark. So what's the difference between a question mark and an exclamation point here? And the answer is it makes no difference to the actual type. It's still an optional whose value here could be a UI label. But it matters on the usage of it. And this is purely just kind of compiler helping you out thing here. But if we look, when I change this to a question mark, you see that some errors appear down here. So let's click on one of these errors like this one, and you can see the error is that UI label question mark does not have a member name text. In other words, you can't send text to a UI label question mark, which is what this is. And that makes sense because UI label question mark is an optional, and obviously optional doesn't respond to text. UI labels do, but optionals don't. So why are we getting this error now when we weren't getting it before? And how would we get rid of this error? Well, we could certainly get rid of this error by just putting an exclamation point here. That would unwrap this optional. And now this would be a UI label right here. We can send it text. And we could do the same thing up here. We can unwrap it there, and we can unwrap it there. And that gets rid of all our errors. But this is kind of an interesting property in that even though it's not initialized at the very beginning of our class's creation, it starts out as nil, not set. As soon as this user interface over here gets loaded up by this view controller, then this gets wired up, right? So that gets wired up, and this is set, and then it's set forever. So it's really kind of would be sad if we actually, every time we used it, had to unwrap it all the time. So these kind of properties that get set very early, maybe not right at creation like this one, but they get set very early and then they stay set all the time. You can, instead of putting a question mark in their declaration, we're talking about their declaration here, you can put an exclamation point. And what that says is, this is just an optional, but always automatically unwrap it so that you don't have to put this exclamation point in here. So if I take this exclamation point out, you can see it's not generating any errors, and it's still going to unwrap this display and turn it into a UI label. And it's still going to crash your program if for some reason the display were nil. If you tried to execute this code, it'd be impossible because this is the button sending this, so the button wouldn't be here if this hadn't gotten already loaded up and set. But if somehow you had some place in your controller where you were accessing display before this UI got loaded, it would crash because it is unwrapping this. It's just that you don't have to put the exclamation point. It's kind of like auto exclamation point. And this is called an implicitly unwrapped optional. Okay, implicitly unwrapped optional. And it's really only useful for this kind of property that's set very early and then stays set forever. So it's kind of syntactic sugar, really. Okay, so let's move on to the next button in our UI right here, which is going to be an enter button. Now, our calculator does not have an equals sign, so you're probably used to calculators where you say 6 plus 3, and then when you hit equals, it shows you the result. This calculator, a little more like a scientific calculator, has an enter key. And so instead, you put the numbers you want to add or divide or multiply or whatever onto a stack, and then when you press the operation keys, it pulls them off the stack. So that looks like this: 6 enter 3 times, or 6 enter 3 enter times. So the times is going to pull the 6 and the 3 off the stack. Or you could even go 6 enter 5 enter 4 enter, and then go times plus, and that would multiply the top two on the stack and then add the last one on. So we need an enter key here for our calculator. Now I'm going to create that enter key in a way that's actually going to cause a problem for me in a moment, but I want to show you how to resolve that very problem. So I'm going to create this enter key by copying and pasting this digit key right here. And I'm just going to put it in here. Notice how I'm lining these blue lines up absolutely perfectly. I don't want them to be, you know, like it's lined up with that one, but not that one, or vice versa. I want them perfectly lined up because later I'm going to spread these out over the whole UI. And if I haven't lined these up just absolutely perfectly, then Xcode's not going to quite know what I want here in terms of the relationship between these. All right, so we don't want a 3 on here. We want to have a enter symbol. So I'm going to go up here to special characters. This is on in most Mac applications. You can go to the edit menu and get special characters. And I'm going to search for this one actually. I think it's called a return. Yeah, and these are just Unicode characters right here. And so I want this one that looks like kind of like a return key or an enter key. So I have this. And I'm going to use the same mechanism we used before, which is control drag. So I'm just going to control drag out here. And we're creating an action, of course, because we want this button to send us a message. I'm going to call enter, because that's what it is, the enter key. Now, one thing that's different about this one, if you remember when we wired this action up, we had the button who was sending it as an argument, and we don't want that this time because there's only one enter key. We don't really need to talk back to the enter key, so we're going to say none right here. So it also doesn't really matter about this type because we're not going to have an argument, so it doesn't matter what this type is. So let's connect that. You can see right here we have enter, and it has no arguments. Now, what are we going to do inside enter? Well, the main thing we need to do is put whatever number is in this display up here, okay, onto our internal stack. So we're going to need an internal stack in a moment here. Another thing we might want to do is set users in the middle of typing a number to false, because we might have been typing a number, but as soon as we hit enter, we're putting it on the stack. Next time we type a digit, we're going to be starting a new number. All right, so we'll call that user is in the middle of typing a number false there. Now, let's go ahead and actually run this and see how this is working, because there's going to be a little problem here. I'm just going to run this. All right, so let's try 8, enter. Oh, well, what's that? Not good. 6, enter. Well, it's kind of working because and after we press enter, the user is in the middle of typing number, starts over, so that's good. but I had no intention for this to be showing up on the end of my display, this little enter key. So what the heck is going on there? Why is that happening? So let's take a look here. The problem here has to do with the messages being sent. So when we wired this up, that's good. We got enter. The problem is that button also sends append digit. And that's because we copied and pasted this 3, remember? And the 3 sends append digit. And so when we copy and pasted it, now this one sends append digit. So it sends both. Okay, it's sending 2. Now, that's a common mistake to make. You didn't really think about that when you copy and paste it. How do we fix this? Well, if you right-click, so I'm going to right-click on this button, you'll get this window that comes up, and it shows you all the connections from this UI element to your code. And you can see here, both append digit and enter are connected. Now the great thing is I can just click this little X right here, and it'll take this connection away. So now I only have enter. So now if I go back here, see, it's not sending append digit, it is sending enter. And you can do this right-clicking for anything, like we can even do it for our label up here. We can see there's the display connection that we have right here. So yeah, don't forget right-click to disconnect things. Now, if you forget about this and you don't do it, or maybe you have it wired up to some thing that you changed. For example, if we had accidentally put an argument here to enter, if we had made it do the sending button trick, kind of like this, you can't just say, oh, okay, and I'll fix that, I'll just delete that, because that would not work, because enter with an argument is actually a different message than enter with no argument. And so if you just deleted that when you run your program, it would crash, and it would say, couldn't